Audrey had finished her urgent morning chores at the nursing station and was now hurrying to Ward 28 to see Sherry. The 6-year-old girl was the staff's favourite. The nurses and doctors often came to check on the little patient. Sweet Sherry smiled, despite her pain and weakness, always eager to socialize. The tiny girl had a serious diagnosis with no good prognosis. The child needed an expensive operation, but her mother couldn't afford it. The fundraising organised by the foundation was moving too slowly. Even the head doctor's attempts to arrange treatment under a quota and negotiate discounts had failed. Sherry was fading away, growing weaker and paler each day. She could barely leave her bed now, though just 3 weeks ago she had happily walked with staff in the hospital square, enjoying the sunny warm weather, despite it being mid-September. Now the sky remained gloomy and unwelcoming, as rain fell steadily and Sherry's condition deteriorated rapidly, as soon as the weather. It pained Audrey to see her favourite patient so quiet, like a shadow of herself. Yet Sherry still smiled and found strength to offer kind words to others. Audrey had worked as a nurse in the children's hospital for many years. She'd seen everything imaginable and often grieved for the children, especially those with terminal illnesses, sometimes to the point of tears and hysteria. But Sherry was different. No patient had ever stirred such deep feelings in Audrey's heart. She often thought how wonderful it would be to have a daughter like Sherry, big-eyed, smiling, sweet. But it hadn't worked out. Despite years of trying, children remained elusive. Audrey and her husband Bruce had undergone medical examinations. Though both were deemed healthy, with excellent compatibility, after nearly 10 years of marriage, they remained childless. At first, this hadn't bothered Audrey much. She was so in love with Bruce that it seemed unimportant whether they had children. Her husband was enough. They'd met at a movie premiere in the theatre, finding themselves seated next to each other by chance. Audrey had come with her friends, Bruce with his. In the half-darkness, amid the crunch of popcorn and muffled conversations, Audrey sat mesmerised by the screen. She was particularly taken with the lead actor, so rugged, with perfect features and a strong chin. During one especially frightening scene where her idol became trapped in a burning car, Audrey couldn't suppress a gasp. The young man beside her turned, smiled, and explained concisely how such stunts were filmed. After that, Audrey found herself stealing glances at him instead of watching the screen. He resembled a younger version of the actor and was just as handsome. Either oblivious to her attention or pretending not to notice, he chatted with friends and made notes on his tablet. His charisma and attractiveness set Audrey's heart racing. Gathering her courage, she approached him with a question about the movie, a transparent pretext he seemed to see right through. Soon they were quietly discussing various topics, careful not to disturb other moviegoers. They introduced themselves, and Audrey learned he was Bruce, a film historian, a professional she hadn't known existed. He attended premieres, wrote reviews, covered festivals nationwide for the press, taught at the School of Arts, and edited scripts for theatre productions. Audrey's story seemed modest in comparison. She had studied at medical school without much initial interest, pressured by her father, a local dentist. When she became a nurse rather than a doctor, it disappointed her ambitious father, though he eventually accepted it. Over time, Audrey discovered she truly loved being a nurse. It felt good to help people and ease their suffering. Audrey had grown up without a mother. She had one once, of course, but never knew her. Her mother died shortly after giving birth to her daughter. Audrey was raised by her father, with help from nannies and grandmothers on both sides. By the time she met Bruce, Audrey was living on her own. Her father had given her a spacious 2-bedroom apartment in a prestigious area of the city after she finished medical school, and Audrey cherished this independence. It's hard to feel like an adult in your parents' home, especially when living in a room that had remained your childhood space for so many years. Audrey felt there was nothing remarkable about her life story. She worried Bruce wouldn't want to spend time with someone so ordinary as she considered herself. His life was entirely different from hers, filled with business trips, performances, movie screenings, and bohemian parties, interesting, vivacious women, with whom most likely there was never a dull moment. They were all unique and sophisticated, as if from another world. Audrey longed for just a glimpse into that world. Surprisingly, as Audrey shared more about herself, Bruce's interest only seemed to grow. "Wow, you have the most essential and noble profession," he said. "Sometimes I wonder who needs my work. The world could manage without film historians, but you medical workers, you're our guardian angels." Audrey disagreed with his assessment. Film historians weren't useless at all. They made the world more interesting and sophisticated, adding colour to life. That was important too, but she couldn't find the right words to express this, so she just smiled, which earned her another compliment. Audrey could hardly believe that someone like Bruce, interesting, confident, charismatic, and part of the bohemian crowd, was interested in her. It seemed incredibly simple. After the movie they walked together, discussed everything, and then kissed. Bruce looked at her in a way no one ever had before. He admired her, studied her. His words were beautiful, his eyes warm and kind. Audrey's shyness and awkwardness melted away. Soon they were dating. It was exciting and thrilling, like living in an adventure. Sometimes Audrey felt like a character in an interesting film. Everything with Bruce was fresh and new. They visited museums and attended plays together. Afterward, they would gather with Bruce's friends in someone's apartment, drinking wine and talking endlessly. These people were experts in cinema and theatre, making clever jokes and witty remarks. They sang unfamiliar but beautiful songs with meaningful lyrics on guitar, recited poetry, reminisced about the past, and dreamed about the future. Audrey met young and seasoned directors, actors and artists. Everyone knew and loved Bruce. He was at home in any company, and people valued his opinion. As Bruce's girlfriend, Audrey was automatically welcomed at these gatherings. They treated her warmly and kindly. She eventually stopped feeling self-conscious about not always being able to join the conversations. It wasn't necessary. There were always people eager to talk, and Audrey enjoyed listening. She was genuinely fascinated. These people were remarkably different from anyone Audrey had known before. Their humour, way of speaking, and style of dress set them apart. Only Kim, a young and beautiful but struggling actress, seemed to watch Audrey with unusual scrutiny, as if searching for flaws. Audrey didn't notice it at first, but when she did, it made her uneasy. Kim craved attention. She spoke loudly and inserted herself into every conversation. She often crossed personal boundaries, patting people's heads or touching their shoulders. She was especially tactile with Bruce, though he seemed oblivious. Kim was the only one who made sarcastic remarks about Audrey. Audrey would freeze, unsure how to respond. Bruce would typically smile discreetly, put his arm around Audrey's waist and say something like, "Kim is a snake. Don't take it too deep." Once, after a production, where Kim had a small role, many people came to support her, including Audrey and Bruce. It was Friday, a day off, and no one had to work the next day. After the premiere, they decided to go to a club to have fun, relax and dance. They all squeezed into Gosha, the artist's car, disregarding proper passenger capacity limits. However, in this company in general, there was a certain disregard for conventional standards and norms, for which Audrey was also incredibly impressed. Finding herself next to Kim, squeezed between two other girls, Audrey decided to pay her a compliment. "You played so wonderfully," Audrey said sincerely. She truly meant it. Despite Kim's wariness of her, Audrey genuinely liked her. "You're doing great." Kim's smile vanished instantly. Her eyes grew cold, her lips twisting into a contemptuous grin. "You're good at something too," she said quietly. "You're good at tying Bruce to yourself. Just know you won't have children. Never. It's not going to work out. Understand?" Audrey felt as if she'd been doused with ice water. Her joyful mood evaporated, replaced by a heavy, nauseating feeling. Kim radiated coldness now. Her angry eyes and sharp gaze made her beauty fade in Audrey's eyes. "What did you say?" Audrey asked. But Kim ignored her, turning to chat with her neighbour as if nothing had happened. Roxy, sitting to Audrey's left, seemed to have heard their exchange. She quickly turned to Audrey with a question, trying to distract her. Bruce, sitting up front with the driver giving directions, hadn't heard a thing. At the club, the group settled at a table flanked by 2 soft sofas. While most headed straight to the dance floor, Audrey remained seated. Kim's words had paralysed her. The hatred in them was overwhelming. Why? Audrey sat alone at the table until Roxy joined her. "Don't take offence at Kim. She's not really a bad person," Roxy said, turning to Audrey. "You heard what she said in the car, right?" "I did, and I know why she's so angry. I'm surprised you haven't figured it out yourself." "What did I do to her?" "You took her man. Bruce, she's been hopelessly in love with him for years. She tried to get close to him, and, well, they lived together briefly before splitting up. She just wasn't right for Bruce. But she can't accept that. She lashed out from anger. Just ignore it." "Bruce never mentioned Kim or their relationship." "Why would he? It meant nothing to him. Just another casual relationship among many. But you're different. You're special to him. I can see. And so can Kim. That's why she's so bitter." Later, when Audrey spoke with Bruce about Kim's behaviour, he just smirked. "They don't call her our snake for nothing. She's quite a character, trying to play the witch now. She's an actress. What can you expect? Yes, we lived together for a couple of months, but I couldn't take it for long. She's clever and fun, a good friend, but in a relationship, Kim's overwhelming. It's different with you." A year later, Bruce and Audrey married. They lived in her apartment. Where else? Bruce had no place of his own. A film historian's salary wasn't impressive or reliable. Feast or famine, as they say. But Audrey didn't mind. She was happy they were a family now, sleeping and waking together, caring for each other. She loved his passion for work. He would sometimes write articles until dawn, fully lost in and concentrated, looking spiritualized and beautiful. Over time, the frequent gatherings dwindled. Bruce's friends had families and serious jobs now, leaving little time for parties. They still met occasionally for bright, cheerful celebrations, but it was no longer their daily routine. Kim, like many others from their old circle, gradually faded away, much to Audrey's relief. Though Kim never made any more shocking statements, that one time was enough to make Audrey fear her. Yes, fear her, with the barbed, angry look and contemptuous grin. Audrey kept working as a nurse, while Bruce kept trying to become a famous critic, but success eluded him. His job was still unstable and poorly paid. Audrey could see how deeply this depressed her husband. His struggles pained her too. She tried to convince him that his income didn't matter to her. What mattered was being together and supporting each other. But Bruce remained worried. Audrey believed that fatherhood would save him, would give him new inspiration and purpose. How could it not? Bruce shared her dream of having a child, but nothing seemed to work. They tried everything: medical examinations, pilgrimages to holy sites, even visits to folk healers, all unsuccessfully. Pregnancy never came. Even after many years of marriage, when they finally tried IVF, their hopes were dashed. The procedure they'd pinned such dreams on failed. Audrey often thought about Kim's words from that day in the car. Kim had declared with certainty that Bruce and Audrey would never have children, but Audrey couldn't accept that this casually thrown phrase held any real meaning. Their struggles with fertility seemed merely coincidental until fate forced her to see things differently. It happened at the train station. After seeing Bruce off on another business trip, Audrey headed to the parking lot where her car was parked. That's when she spotted a dark figure hunched behind a newspaper stand, clearly in pain. Audrey rushed to help, while others walked past, unwilling to get involved or absorbed in their own affairs. Most likely, they assumed the figure was just another drunk or homeless person. But to Audrey, even the homeless and alcoholics deserved help. As she approached, Audrey realized she was looking at a young Roma woman, no more than 17 or 18. The girl's face was ashen, despite her dark complexion, her huge black eyes filled with pain, her forehead damp with sweat. "What's wrong?" Audrey asked. The woman clutched her stomach in response. Then Audrey noticed her rounded, tense belly. The Roma woman was in labour, with regular, painful contractions. There was no time to waste. "I'll call an ambulance." "You need to go to the hospital." "No, take me to the countryside where our camp is. They'll help me there." "You really should go to the hospital." "No," the girl insisted. "I have no documents, and most important, it's not allowed in our society. We have our own doctor at the camp. I just need to get there." Audrey hesitated. The labouring woman was adamant, and leaving her at the station wasn't an option. Perhaps they did have medical help at their camp. People had been giving birth outside hospitals for centuries. Later, Audrey wondered if the Roma woman had somehow influenced her decision through hypnosis. Taking a woman in labour to a gypsy camp instead of a hospital seemed unwise. Nevertheless, Audrey helped the young woman into her car, settled her in the back seat, and drove out of town, following her directions. "Thank you," the young gypsy said as they neared their destination. "You've saved me and my daughter." "I hope so." "Don't worry, I know we'll be fine now, but you have a curse on you. Did you know?" Audrey tensed. She'd heard about fortune-tellers who tried to swindle people by claiming to remove curses. "No, don't think that. I'm telling the truth. I want to help you too, to repay your kindness." Though the contractions were coming frequently, now and clearly painful, the gypsy woman continued. "You can't have children because of the curse. Everything will change when you help a pure soul to stay in this world." The Roma woman writhed in pain. Labour was clearly imminent. They barely had time. The camp appeared before them in a clearing, like something from an old movie, though modern vans had replaced the traditional wagons and horses. They seemed to be expected. Several men and women emerged to meet them. Two older Roma women immediately took charge of the labouring girl, carefully guiding her toward one of the vans. The others thanked Audrey for helping the girl. Audrey smiled uncertainly, shrugged it off, and hurried back to her car. The whole situation felt strange, incomprehensible, and somewhat frightening. She just wanted to get home. That night, lying in bed, Audrey pondered the young woman's words. Somehow, the woman had known about Audrey's inability to have children. It was astonishing. But then she said something absurd. To break the spell of infertility, Audrey would need to stay a pure soul in the world. It was a vicious circle. The gypsy had likely misspoken out of pain and fear. Audrey didn't believe in any of it anyway. A curse? Really? Audrey was a medical professional, pragmatic to her core. Yet Kim's words from that memorable evening in the car kept echoing in her head, robbing her of sleep. Audrey hurried to Sherry's ward, wanting to spend time with the girl. Children need so much attention. Seriously ill children usually stay with their mothers, but Sherry was alone. Her mother, Lena, was struggling to raise 2 children by herself, Sherry and her little brother James. Audrey knew James well. He was a wonderful child, bright like his sister. He would bring toys to cheer up Sherry and draw pictures for her. Sherry always asked to have them hung above her bed. They were such sweet, friendly children. Lena worked 2 jobs just to stay afloat. Their father had died. Then another tragedy struck. Sherry was diagnosed with a serious illness. Lena grew gaunt and pale. She was running herself ragged, barely managing to cope. Audrey's heart ached for her. So young, yet nearly broken by despair. What would become of the children if Lena couldn't manage? What if Sherry didn't get her operation in time? The answers were too frightening to contemplate. That's why the staff did everything they could to help Sherry. Everyone sympathized with the girl and knew her family's struggles. They all tried to care for her in small ways, and Sherry met every kindness with gratitude. Despite her youth, she never took the care for granted. She loved those who looked after her. But Audrey held a special place in her heart. A unique bond had formed between the nurse and the girl. Audrey hadn't welcomed it at first. She knew about the girl's grave diagnosis and slim chances of recovery. Audrey also knew they probably wouldn't raise enough money for the operation in time. She dreaded what might happen to Sherry, but she tried not to dwell on it, especially now that she had formed a plan she hadn't shared with anyone yet. She wasn't certain if it would succeed. Audrey understood too well the pain of losing someone dear, that all-consuming anguish that drowns out everything else. The wound that never truly heals, the thoughts that exhaust you. Time doesn't heal, it only helps you adjust to the loss, learn to live with it somehow. Audrey feared experiencing those feelings again. Just 5 months ago, she had lost her father, her only remaining family. They'd been at odds lately, because of Bruce. Her father insisted that her husband was taking advantage of her, living off her income when it should have been the reverse. A man should provide for his family, buy his wife gifts. Instead, you're always funding his projects. None have ever made a profit. You pay for his festival tickets, and what does he do in return? Her father believed Bruce was manipulating her, feigning love to exploit her. What could Audrey say? She understood how it looked. She did earn significantly more than Bruce. They lived in her apartment, and she covered most expenses. Her father even sent her monthly allowances for personal treats. But Bruce was kind-hearted and tried his best. He worked nights now, travelling frequently for business, hoping to earn more. That's why they were growing distant. They used to be inseparable, but Audrey never complained or started arguments about it. She understood how important a career was for a man. She wanted her beloved to succeed in his profession and reach new heights. It was Bruce's dream. But instead, he often grew dejected, reading about the success of colleagues he considered less talented, generally puzzled how their worthless scribbles gained recognition while his masterpieces went unnoticed. Audrey considered her husband talented and believed he would eventually succeed and become famous. She tried to tell Bruce this as often as possible. At first, he appreciated her words and support. Now it all rather annoyed him. Audrey's father had considered Bruce a slacker, disliking his son-in-law almost from their first meeting. Yet he tried not to pressure his daughter, keeping his opinion to himself. Only in the last year of his life did he begin making unflattering remarks about Bruce. His father's health was failing. After retiring from his beloved work, the elderly man grew listless. Audrey visited him more frequently. They would talk over tea in a way they never had before. Though usually a man of few words, it was as if he was finally opening his soul to his daughter.
"I don't have long, Audrey."
"Don't say that. What are you talking about?"
"We must face the truth. My heart is failing. My motor's getting weak. Miracles don't happen, and I can't leave with peace of mind. You're Bruce. I don't think he can take care of you."
"Dad, stop it. You'll live 100 years.
"Daughter, maybe Bruce isn't so bad as I think about him, but at least keep him out of the inheritance I'm leaving you. He'll squander it on all his projects. This money is for your foundation, for a quiet, independent life."
Audrey couldn't bear to imagine a world without her father. These conversations terrified her, but eventually her father proved right. He collapsed one day on the street. Though neighbours called an ambulance, the elderly man didn't survive the trip to the hospital. Audrey took a long time to recover. Bruce was perpetually absent, endless business trips and late nights at work. She faced her grief alone. Now, almost 5 months had passed since that terrible day. Soon Audrey would receive a significant inheritance, an expensive car, an apartment in the city centre, and a substantial sum in the bank. Bruce was already anticipating it. He constantly discussed how they would spend the money. He had no doubt he would finally buy the car of his dreams, and just as Audrey's father had warned, Bruce planned to use the money for yet another project. But Audrey had made her decision. She would handle the inheritance as she saw fit. She hadn't told Bruce her plans yet. He would likely try to dissuade her, subjecting her to weeks of pressure. He would find out after the fact, when it was too late to change anything, so Audrey remained silent. She tried not to dwell on how her husband would react to her decision. He used to be so different. In their early days, he seemed to read her thoughts and share her dreams completely. They saw the world through the same lens. But after their wedding, Bruce had gradually changed. Now, he would certainly neither understand nor approve of her actions. But there was no other way. Audrey had made up her mind. Ward 28. Audrey entered with a smile. Little Sherry lay on the bed, her long blonde hair spread across the pillow, dampness on her forehead. The girl was resting before her next test, which would surely strain her fragile body. The hardest part was that Sherry knew another attack was inevitable, yet she seemed to consciously savour these peaceful moments. "Hello, Princess," Audrey smiled, approaching to check her temperature. The cool forehead brought her relief. "Hi." Sherry brightened at the sight of her familiar friend. "You've already come." "Of course I came. I missed you terribly." "I missed you too. Shall I guess what you dreamed?" Sherry asked with a weak but sly smile. This was their ritual. Each morning Sherry would guess Audrey's dreams, describing magical tales of princesses, unicorns, and brave princes. Her imagination was boundless. Audrey wished she could truly have such beautiful, vibrant dreams. As Sherry spoke in her soft, weak voice, Audrey watched her and grew more certain of her decision. Yes, she would do it. As soon as she accessed her inheritance, she would transfer the funds needed for Sherry's expensive operation. It would consume almost all the money her father had left her, but Audrey felt no regret, not even slightly. These funds would save this precious girl's life. Her father would surely be proud of her choice, and glad to know his life savings would serve such a purpose. His years of work would not have been in vain. Bruce, of course, would not be happy. He would be angry, shout, and eventually accept the situation. After all, It wasn't his right to decide. Sherry got tired from the morning's conversation. Audrey noticed this, stroked the girl's blonde hair, and suggested reading a story. On the bedside table lay a thick book with bright pictures and stories about princes and princesses that Sherry loved so much. Audrey often read to her. The girl would listen attentively and almost always drift off to sleep. That was good. Sherry needed strength to fight the disease. "Oh, yes, please read," Sherry rejoiced. "The one about how the princess made the witch good. That's my favourite fairy tale." "As you wish." Audrey took the book, opened it to the right page and began to read. Of course, a few days later, Bruce was furious. When Audrey told him everything, he even knocked things over in his rage. But it was all useless. The money for Sherry's operation was already in the hospital's account.
"I cannot believe you did this to me," he fumed. "We're married, all these years together, and what? My opinion means nothing to you."
"This girl will die without surgery, and very soon," Audrey repeated.
"It doesn't matter. Every day someone dies without treatment. Girls, boys, men, women. You can't save everyone."
Audrey remained silent. She couldn't explain to Bruce that Sherry wasn't a stranger to her. He wouldn't understand. Bruce raged for an hour, trying to figure out if the money could be returned. According to the rules, Audrey could withdraw her payment within a week, but she firmly told her husband she wouldn't. Finally, Bruce slammed the door and left the house. Where was he going? When would he return? He didn't bother to tell the confused Audrey any of this. Well, that was his right. He had reason to be offended. Audrey lay down on the bed, hugging her pillow. Her heart was heavy. She still loved Bruce, of course, and felt sorry for him. She wished he could understand her as he had before he changed so dramatically. Or perhaps her father was right. Maybe Bruce had just pretended at the beginning of their relationship to be the perfect spouse for a wealthy man's daughter. No. The way Bruce had looked at her back then, that couldn't be faked. Those words that made her head spin. It still sometimes happened. Rarely, but still. He'll get over it. He'll understand. Audrey would try again to explain how important it was to save Sherry. No one else could help that little girl. The fundraising was moving slowly. The amount needed was substantial. Finally, she managed to convince herself that everything would work out in the end. At a cafe table sat a striking couple, a handsome man and a woman who looked like a movie star. They were deep in heated conversation, their coffee gone cold, completely absorbed in conversation. "A week," the man was saying. "We only have a week, then it'll be too late." "What a worthless hag! I always knew she was trouble, but this much. But don't worry, my plan will work perfectly." "I don't know. It's risky." "Don't be a coward. It'll all work out. We'll make it look like she took the pills herself. You'll confirm her behaviour has been strange lately. She'll be declared incompetent, and her recent actions will be challenged in court, including this money transfer. You, as her sole legal heir, will recover the money from the fund, and everything will be even better than we planned." What if we're caught? I don't want to go to prison." "You won't get caught. Put this medicine in her water, and when it's done, place the empty packets beside her. It works quickly, I've heard. It'll be smooth. No one will know. She'll drink the water herself. You won't be the one administering it. And the money? Not just the money, but everything. The apartment, the car. We'll get it all. No more begging, no more depending on her." The man looked at his companion doubtfully, clearly hesitating.
Are you feeling sorry for her? The woman's eyes narrowed angrily. Perhaps you still have feelings for her. No, no, the man shook his head. You know I've always loved you. Only you. I was jealous when you were with others. That director, all of them.
They were just means to an end, the woman smiled. Nothing more, just as your wife was to you.
You know I married her for money. You're the one who put me up to it. I remember everything.
The woman covered the man's palm with her hand. Even from the side it was clear she held great power over him. We needed money. You'd been getting it from her all this time. Thanks to that, we travelled, dined at restaurants, enjoyed ourselves. We've both been unlucky in our careers, you and me. I'm a third-rate actress, and you're an unrecognised genius.
A genius, the man snorted.
Of course you're a genius. Your lyrics are beautiful. I can't believe they haven't been appreciated yet. You're smart, clever and brave. You'll succeed. Just imagine how happy we'll be afterward. It's fortunate she donated the money to the foundation. Without that, we never would have taken this big step. We'd only have gotten a fraction of her inheritance. But this way, we'll get everything. Everything. We'll go to the Maldives right away. I've dreamed of that for so long. Just you and me, with this beautiful fairy tale all around. The woman's last words seemed to finally convince the man. His expression showed he had made up his mind. I'll do it, he said, looking into his beautiful companion's eyes. For you, I'm ready to do anything. They lingered in the cafe a while longer. Then the man paid, took his companion by the elbow, and they strolled leisurely to the exit. They thought no one could hear them. They spoke quietly, almost in whispers. No one they knew was around, but the couple paid no attention to the blonde woman and little boy at the next table. But this woman was listening intently to their conversation, catching every word and committing it to memory. She was both fascinated and horrified by what she heard. She even managed to photograph the attractive couple discussing their monstrous plan. To anyone watching, she appeared completely focused on her young son, wiping his mouth with a napkin or stroking his head. In reality, she was listening intently. As soon as the couple left the cafe, she pulled out her cell phone to make a call. Audrey was surprised to see Lena's number on the vibrating screen. Sherry's mum rarely called her, and only in emergencies, concerning her sick daughter. But now everything seemed fine. Audrey had just been in Sherry's room, reading the girl's favourite fairy tale about a princess and a witch. The little girl had fallen asleep peacefully.
Hello?
Lena's excited voice came through the phone.
I really need to talk to you. It's urgent.
All right. I'm on shift now, but I have lunch in half an hour. I can meet you at the hospital, if you can come.
I can. It's urgent. I've already cancelled my shift.
They sat on a bench in the hospital garden. Though it was early November, the weather was warm and sunny, as if September had suddenly returned. Lena showed Audrey the photo on her phone and recounted the conversation she had overheard in the cafe. I recognised him by chance. Your husband. You showed me photos from your family celebration. Your husband is a good-looking man, handsome. It's difficult to forget such a man. This morning James and I went to a cafe, and I saw him sitting at a table with this woman. Audrey looked at the photo on Lena's phone screen. Yes, it was Bruce. He was sitting with a beautiful woman, gently holding her hand. Audrey recognised her, too. Kim, the same woman who had never hidden her contempt for Audrey and had tormented her with endless teasing. Her prophetic words about childishness remained vivid in Audrey's memory. Kim was still beautiful after all these years. Luxurious figure, impeccable makeup, perfect features. Time had only enhanced her charm, like fine wine. The photo made it clear that the feelings between Bruce and Kim remained strong. They hadn't faded or cooled. Roxy must have been either mistaken or deliberately lying when she said Bruce never really loved Kim, that Audrey was special and the only one for him. Perhaps Roxy had known about their plans all along and played along. Lena's words were monstrous, but Audrey believed every one. After all, why would she lie? What would be the point? Lena had been so grateful when she discovered who had transferred the missing portion of money. She had even cried, making Audrey uncomfortable. But Lena wouldn't stop expressing her gratitude, insisting she would do anything for her daughter's saviour. Audrey had done more than just transfer the money. She had handled all the organisational aspects. Besides, as a medical professional, she understood the nuances better than Lena. Audrey even requested unscheduled leave to accompany the girl to another city for surgery. She wanted to stay close to Sherry during that time. Lena wasn't familiar with medical procedures. She might get confused. No, Lena wouldn't fabricate such a story. Besides, there were photographs. They revealed more clearly than words could that Bruce and Kim, that deep feelings existed between them. They want to get rid of you for the money, to recover the money you sent to the foundation, and make it appear like you did it yourself. They plan to poison you with some medicine. Oh my gosh, it's terrifying. Don't consume anything at home, no food or drink. In fact, we should go to the police. Though they spoke quietly, I heard everything clearly. I'll testify as a witness. You mustn't be alone with that dangerous man. Audrey shared Lena's thoughts. She couldn't maintain a facade of ignorance about Bruce. Lena was right. He truly was dangerous. Dangerous enough to contemplate such a thing. No. Perhaps Bruce would have backed out, might have changed his mind at the last moment. Still, the fact that he seriously discussed such plans with his mistress chilled Audrey to the bone. Naturally, the woman wouldn't return home. What if Bruce went through with it? If not poison, he might try something else. Kim and Bruce might have already altered their plan after leaving the cafe. Being alone with him wasn't safe. Audrey would claim she needed to work an overnight shift. That would be more secure. "Stay at my place," Lena offered, seeming to read her thoughts. "We'll strategize about bringing them to justice. Such people belong behind bars." A few hours later, Bruce and Kim had another conversation about their villain plan. "That won't work tonight. She's covering another nurse's night shift." Bruce nearly shouted into the phone, desperate. "This isn't good. We're running out of time," Kim responded anxiously. "Okay, then go to her workplace. Bring her a bottle of water. The special water. She has a staff room there, right? That's where you'll do it." "But that would make me suspect. It's too obvious. I'll visit her at night, and she'd go straight to the other world. At worst, they'd think you argued and she couldn't cope. It's even better." "Though frightening," Bruce said, calming down a little. "Don't worry. Call her now. Time's running out. Do you understand that?" Half an hour later, Audrey, sipping tea in Lena's kitchen, received a message from Bruce that he missed her and was going to visit her in the hospital. Little James slept soundly in his room. The second crib in the nursery stood empty, but soon Sherry would return home after her operation. After hearing Audrey, Lena grasped everything. "So, they're planning to poison you at work? They're rushing. Great, we'll catch them red-handed." "How?" "It's simple," Lena smiled. "My cousin works in the police. He's aware of the situation. I've consulted him today after our conversation. He said to call if anything happened." "Well, that if has arrived. Let's catch the criminal in the act," Lena declared with a triumphant smile. Meanwhile, Bruce sat in the hospital lobby, heart racing, awaiting his wife. He clutched the bottle in his hand. It appeared to be ordinary water, but contained a deadly mixture of powerful medicine. Bruce trembled with fear. How would events unfold? How long would it take? What if someone discovered them? He pitied Audrey. Despite her naivety, she was kind, and she loved him deeply. She would do anything for him, yet he would do anything for Kim. This woman had always commanded his complete devotion. Her every word became his command, beautiful, intelligent, calculating. With her, Bruce felt invincible. He yearned to move mountains for her. These feelings remained unchanged through the years. Kim seemed to reciprocate his love. She also craved money and dreamed of luxury. The vision of their life together in a seaside paradise beckoned. Yet the path to happiness held trials. Serious, terrible trials. Bruce knew this act would forever alter his life. Yet for Kim's sake he would bear it. She depended on him. There's Audrey. She approaches, tired and troubled, yet seemingly unaware. She's smiling. It's a peculiar smile. She must be exhausted. They made their way to the staff room. As expected, they were alone. They sat down at the table and began to talk. Bruce was speaking complete nonsense. He improvised a story about why he had come to her at night. Strangely enough, it worked. Audrey seemed to believe every word. Audrey offered tea. Bruce agreed. This was the moment of truth. When she stepped away to get candy, Bruce poured almost half the bottle into her tea. Kim had said a couple of sips would be enough, maybe even one, but he added more to be certain. And then something Bruce hadn't expected at all happened. Tall, stern-faced men emerged from the bathroom, some wearing uniforms. Unlike her husband, Audrey wasn't surprised by their appearance. She looked at Bruce with eyes full of pain and disappointment. Bruce stood there completely bewildered. A year hadn't yet passed since these events, when Audrey, Lena, James and Sherry walked through the sun-drenched park. So much had changed in Audrey's life. First, she was now officially divorced. Bruce was in prison. Forensics had confirmed that the bottle he brought to the hospital contained a strong poison. The same substance was found in Audrey's teacup, and a hidden camera had captured the moment he poured it. Kim didn't escape punishment either. Though she received a shorter sentence, she could have avoided responsibility altogether. Bruce never mentioned her during interrogation. But Lena was a witness. So Kim ended up behind bars, instead of in the Maldives. Then came Sherry's operation. It was crucial and expensive. Audrey and Lena never left the girl's side. While Lena supported her daughter emotionally, Audrey handled all the organisational matters and paperwork. Both women were overwhelmed with responsibilities. Thankfully, 4-year-old James turned out to be remarkably understanding and independent. It was as if he sensed that the adults couldn't be disturbed. Instead, he helped however he could. He would bring his tired mother water or a self-made sandwich for Audrey. The operation was successful, performed by a young surgeon Audrey had heard much about. Dr. Baldoni was a rising star in paediatric surgery. Audrey had specifically chosen him. Sherry, knowing his reputation as the best in his field, he took special interest in Sherry's case. The story had made headlines, creating quite a stir, and Sherry arrived at the clinic as something of a celebrity. Dr. Baldoni was moved by the generosity of Audrey, who, despite not being wealthy, had committed such a large sum to help a child. Audrey hardly noticed as Dr. Baldoni, now simply Matteo to her, became someone dear and close. It happened naturally and gradually. They discussed Sherry's health and the remarkable story of the little girl and her devoted nurse. Soon, Matteo began sharing more about himself and once invited Audrey to coffee. That's how their relationship began. Now they're married. Everything happened so quickly between them. Audrey moved in with him, found a new job, and relocated. Her hometown held too many memories of the ugly incident with Bruce. She needed a fresh start. And she found it with Matteo, who, despite his busy schedule, showered her with attention and care. Lena and her children remained in their hometown, and she and Audrey had become close friends. More than friends, really, they were like sisters. It was a beautiful thing. Lena and her children visited Audrey regularly, both for companionship and checkups. After the operation, Sherry's recovery was remarkable. They still monitored her condition carefully, though Matteo was confident they shouldn't expect any setbacks. That day, Lena had brought the children to visit Audrey. The weather was perfect, the height of summer, so they decided to enjoy a walk in the park together. Sherry walked beside Audrey, clinging to her hand and chattering cheerfully. James zipped ahead on his small scooter, though he never strayed too far, stopping, turning around, waiting for them. Audrey gazed at Sherry in amazement. Her blue eyes sparkled. Her once pale cheeks now glowed with health, and her thick pigtails shone like ripe wheat. Such strength and energy radiated from her now. Less than a year ago, she had been fading away in a hospital bed, seemingly without hope, but their efforts had not been in vain. Another remarkable change had come to Audrey's life, the most incredible one. She could hardly believe that a tiny life now grew beneath her heart. Though her belly wasn't showing yet, she could feel the confident, energetic movements of her baby. This child, conceived with Matteo, without any medical intervention, had come as a complete surprise. Audrey had been upfront with Matteo about her infertility and her previous marriage's struggles. Matteo hadn't been concerned at all. "We can adopt from an orphanage," he said. "I'm adopted myself, so I consider it my duty to raise a child from an orphanage." His words had touched Audrey deeply. She and Bruce had never even considered adoption. Yet when Matteo suggested it, Audrey knew immediately she was ready, more than ready. She yearned to give a child love, comfort, warmth, and family. She had begun gathering documents for the foster parent program when they discovered the astonishing news. Audrey was pregnant. Pharmacy tests and examinations at the women's clinic confirmed it. Now she was carrying this precious, long-awaited baby. Matteo remained steadfast by her side, sharing in her joy. They hadn't abandoned their adoptive plans, merely postponed them. After their baby was born and a bit older, they would surely give them a brother or sister. One evening, while preparing a warm salad for dinner and waiting for Matteo to come home, Audrey was struck by a sudden realization. She gasped as she remembered the young gypsy's word. The curse would lift when Audrey helped to stay a pure soul in this world. Back then, it had made no sense. How could she do it when she couldn't bear children? Even the finest doctors couldn't help her. Now, Audrey understood. Sherry was that pure soul. By saving her, by funding her treatment, Audrey had fulfilled the prophecy. She had freed herself from an unfaithful husband, found true love, and now carried a child of her own. Audrey remained sceptical about fortune-telling and curses, yet she couldn't deny that the gypsy woman's words had come true. "How about some ice cream?" she called to James and Sherry as they passed a kiosk on this scorching day. The children clapped their hands in delight. "You spoil them," Lena said with a smile. "Every child deserves someone to spoil them," Audrey replied, leading Sherry and James toward the kiosk.